Hey, it's Matthew E. with Downtime Activities, and today I'm going to be doing a deck tech on my Commander deck for the Commander Queen Marchesa.
Alright, let's get into the deck tech. This Queen Marchesa Commander deck combines a couple of different themes together for a really fun and interesting deck. It's going to have Human Tribal as one of the main themes, as well as Aristocrats, meaning sacrificing your own creatures for value and to incrementally win the game. We'll also have some taxing effects, some generically good cards, and the Monarchy will be a somewhat consistent theme throughout the deck, as it is a really fun mechanic to introduce into a Commander game. We're not going to go into specific details on a lot of the lands in this deck, but a couple that follow along with the human theme are Unclaimed Territory and Path of Ancestry. Unclaimed Territory adds 1 mana of any color for human creatures when we choose creatures as it enters. The other, Path of Ancestry, is a lot like Command Tower. It'll tap for any of our commander's color identity colors, being red, white, and black for Marchesa, and whenever we use it to cast a creature that shares a creature type with her, human being the important one, we'll get to scry 1. It's a great fixing land and will give us a little bit of extra value for all those humans we're going to play. We'll also be playing a pretty good pile of artifact ramp spells like any good commander deck probably should. We'll be doing all 3 of the Ravnica signets that are in our color, Rakdos, Orzhov, and Boros, as well as an Arcane Signet, because it'll tap for all 3 of our colors, a Commander Sphere, and everyone's favorite, Sol Ring. Now that we're done with the boring lands and ramp pieces of the deck, let's get into the cool stuff, Human Tribal. For this Human Tribal deck, we're going to have quite a few different cards that are humans themselves and/or produce human creature tokens. One card will be Thraben Doomsayer. He just lets us every turn tap him to create another 1/1 white human creature token. This keeps us with plenty of humans on the board, as well as gives us good sacrifice fodder. We'll also run Trin, Champion of Freedom, who, as well as partnering with a later card that we'll talk about to fetch him out of the deck and give us a free card draw, gives us, at our end step, 1/1 white human soldier creature token, so long as we keep attacking. We'll also run Hero of Precinct 1, which for all the multicolored spells in the deck will give us free human creature tokens. Hanweir Militia Captain, that once it flips over, every turn will be giving us a 1/1 human creature token. We'll also run a General's Enforcer. He'll give our legendary humans indestructible, and we have a good number of legendary humans in this deck, and we will also be able to use him to exile cards from graveyards, giving us free graveyard hate that makes 1/1 human soldier creature tokens in the process. Apart from these creature sources of human tokens, we'll also run some non-creature spells that do the same. Elspeth, Sun's Nemesis, is a recurring planeswalker we can cast from our graveyard over and over again with the escape mechanic, and her -2 gives us the ability to pump out 2 white human soldier creature tokens every turn. We will also run a Call the Coppercoats. This lets us make a number of tokens equal to the number of creatures our opponents control, as many of those opponents as we want, so long as we have enough mana to pay that strive cost. And lastly with those, we'll run Increasing Devotion. Increasing Devotion will give us 5 human soldier creature tokens in 1 cast, and then we can flash it back late in the game for 9 mana and get 10 of those creatures instead. 2 more lands here. We'll be running Westvale Abbey and Castle Ardenvale. These both create human soldier creature tokens, while also being a normal land drop for the turn. These are really, really powerful, and Westvale Abbey gives us a cool way to sacrifice some of this fodder we're making for a big game-ending threat. We'll run some cards to support this human tribal theme as lords. Cards, creatures, and enchantment that will give all of these humans we're making bonuses and make them game-ending threats as a big board of attackers. We'll run Jarina Kudro, who is a token producer herself, making a 1/1 white human soldier creature token for each time we've cast Queen Marchesa during the game, as well as giving all of our humans +2/+0. This will make those dorky little 1/1s into 3/1s, and enough of those attack, you can wipe somebody out in one fell swoop. We'll also run her dad, General Kudro of Drannith. General Kudro will give all of our humans +1/+1. Whenever he or another human enters a battlefield, he'll let us hate on the graveyard again, exiling cards from them, and give us the ability to pay 2 mana and sacrifice 2 of our humans to destroy a creature with power 4 or greater. He kind of hits a lot of the different themes of this deck, with being able to sacrifice creatures for our aristocrats, as well as pumping all of our humans, and being a human soldier creature token himself. We'll also be running Athalia's Lieutenant, who will enter into the battlefield, giving all of our humans +1/+1 counters and accruing more himself as more humans enter the battlefield. And lastly, Sanctuary Lockdown. It's just a Lord in enchantment form, giving +1/+1 to all of our creatures, and giving a nice little ability where we can pay 2 mana, tap 2 of those human creature tokens we make, and tap a different creature, something probably much bigger and scarier than 2 1/1s on our opponent's side of the board. We'll also get to run a couple of cool payoff spells for being a human tribal deck. One of these is Repel the Abominable. It prevents all damage that would be dealt this turn by non-human sources. This means that it acts as a fog for us if we really need it to keep us from dying, but it'll also really mess up the combat math for our opponents if we go for a big attack. All of a sudden, all their creatures will be blocking or being blocked by ours and have dealt no damage while our creatures will deal damage normally. We'll also run a Devout Chaplain, just a recursive way to take out artifacts and enchantments by tapping it and 2 untapped humans we control, giving us repeated hate on 2 very common card types in the format. And lastly, an all-star in this deck, Angel of Glory's Rise. It's a 4/6 angel, not a human, but works really well with humans. When it enters the battlefield, you get to exile all zombies, and then return all humans from your graveyard to the battlefield. This means that all those humans you've been sacrificing to your different effects throughout the game will all come back. Also, it can randomly hate out if there's a zombie tribal player who happens to be at the table with you, or it just will wipe out a few incidental zombies. And there are a lot of very powerful creatures in the format that just happen to be zombies, so this card entering in is usually a big blowout. Next up, we'll be going over the cards that make up the other big theme of our deck, which is Aristocrats, sacrificing your own creatures for value. We will start with the different sacrifice outlets that we have in this deck. The first being Sylvar, Devourer of the Free. Sylvar partners with a previously mentioned card, Trin, Champion of Freedom, meaning that when we cast one, we can search the other from our deck. He is not a human himself, but partners really well with humans. He is a 4/2 with Menace, and you can sacrifice any humans that you have to give him a +1/+1 counter, and he will gain Indestructible until end of turn. This makes him a free sacrifice outlet for all of our humans, and makes him a pretty powerful threat, being able to protect himself by sacrificing humans and getting bigger doing it. We'll also be running Titan Hunter. Titan Hunter's really good at dealing damage to everybody at the table while not really punishing us at all with his ability. The way Titan Hunter works is, at the beginning of each player's end step, if they didn't have a creature die during that turn, they take 4 damage. We're going to be sacrificing our own creatures pretty constantly, so this won't really punish us at all, while incrementally taking pretty big chunks of life from our opponents. Titan Hunter is also a sacrifice outlet, being able to pay 2 mana and sacrifice a creature to gain 4 life. We'll run a Plague Crafter, which will enter in and have each player sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, and those who can't will discard a card. This means a lot of the time, we'll be taking out a more relevant creature for our opponents than ourselves, because we've got a bunch of fodder that we want to sacrifice. And worst case scenario, we can always sacrifice Plague Crafter to its own ability, and probably get a lot more value from what we take out from our opponents. We'll also be running a couple of powerful all-star artifacts that are going to be ways for us to kill our own creatures. First off is Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp, everybody knows Skull Clamp. Overpowered, very good in this deck. It's a 1 mana equipment, 1 to equip, gives a creature +1/-1, and whenever that creature dies, you draw 2 cards. What this turns into in our deck with all the fodder we're going to be making for it is an artifact that says 1 mana, draw 2 cards. And that is a super powerful effect, letting us refill our hand. We'll also run Ashnod's Altar, which is a free sacrifice outlet that adds 2 colorless mana for each creature you sacrifice to it. There's some cool shenanigans with this card, one interaction in particular that I'll go into a little bit later. Up next, we have a couple other ways to accrue value from all these creatures we're sacrificing in the form of card advantage. We'll be running a Grim Horospex, which has a morph ability, sometimes you can use it, not really super relevant. The important thing is that whenever one of your non-token creatures die, you get to draw a card. Grim Horospex, also a human, so fits into the full theme of the deck. We're also going to be running Species Specialist, same thing, human creature. When it enters, we choose a creature type. For us, that will be humans, and whenever any creature of the chosen type dies, you get to draw a card. Species Specialist is awesome here because that means for each of our token creatures that are humans, we're also going to be drawing that card. Another sneaky powerful equipment here is Heirloom Blade. Heirloom Blade has the ability that whenever its equipped creature dies, you can reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with it. You get to put that card into your hand, and then the rest go on the bottom in a random order. It's a 3-mana equipment, equips for only 1, and gives +3/+1, which is a really relevant bonus, even when you throw it on a 1/1 token. What this means is that whatever creature is equipped with this blade, when it dies, whether in combat or to our own sacrifice abilities, it's going to draw us the next human in our deck, giving us card advantage and another threat to deploy and keep the game going, hopefully close it out. Next up, we're going to be going through the Blood Artist effects that we run in this deck. We aren't going to be running Blood Artist itself in this deck because that's a vampire and that doesn't fit the theme at all. We do have a couple of creatures that will be dealing direct damage to our opponents as we're sacrificing our fodder humans. The first up is Zulaport Cutthroat. Zulaport Cutthroat has the ability that whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. This means all those tokens that we're sacrificing are going to be pinging our opponents and keeping us at a healthy life total. We'll also be running a copy of Sir Conrad the Grim. I love Sir Conrad. Super powerful card, super cool card. He is a human, which helps a lot, and he has the ability, whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. This will trigger with all of our shenanigans with our sacrifice outlets and things like that, but it'll also just be triggering constantly throughout the game from a lot of other stuff that just normally happens during a commander game. He will be dealing lots of incremental damage to your opponents, and it'll really sneak up on them. He's also got the ability to mill a couple of cards from each player, and that can be a way to kind of get the last couple points of damage if need be. We'll also run a Bastion of Remembrance, which is an enchantment, making it a little harder to interact with than most of the creatures, that makes a 1/1 human for us when it enters, and has that same whenever a creature you control dies, they lose a life, you gain a life effect. A powerful card that has some really cool interactions in this deck is Captivating Crew. Captivating Crew is a 4-mana 4/3 human pirate that has the ability to pay 4 mana and gain control of a creature an opponent controls until end of turn. You untap it, it gains haste, and you can only activate that ability as a sorcery. This is a cool card just to spend 4 mana and take your opponent's biggest, baddest thing and smack them in the face with it. Feels really good to do that, but when combined with our sacrifice outlets, especially Ashnod's Altar, is a really, really nasty threat on the board. Picture this. Captivating Crew out, Ashnod's Altar. You pay 4 mana. You steal your opponent's creature. You sacrifice it to Ashnod's Altar, getting 2 mana back. You have effectively spent 1 colorless and 1 red mana to remove any creature on the battlefield. And you can do this as many times as you have that 2 mana. It makes his ability cost half as much and kills their creature in the process. With 8, 10 mana, you can pump into this. You're going to be able to wipe every relevant threat off the board that your opponents have. I love Captivating Crew. Super cool card. Next up, it's time to go over some of those taxing effects I was talking about earlier. The taxes side of this deck isn't a major theme, but we have just a couple cards that have them that are humans or go well with the ability to protect us and the monarchy. Up first, we have a couple of the painful taxes that we're going to be using. These will punish our opponents for the things they're casting or activating. First up is Harsh Mentor. Harsh Mentor is a 2-mana 2/2. It's a human cleric. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, it deals 2 damage to them. There are a lot of things in the Commander format that will trigger off of this, a surprising number of them, and it's kind of just a dinky 2-mana 2/2 that they won't really pay attention to until it's dealt them 8 or 10 damage, and then they'll be thinking twice about that. We'll also run Commander All-Star Kambal, Console of Allocation, for the 2 damage 2 and 2 life gain back for us every time an opponent casts a non-creature spell. Next up, we'll have a couple of taxing effects that tax attacks? Attack taxes? Attaxes? We're going to have some attack taxes next that will protect us, and more importantly, the monarchy. These will be Baird, Steward of Argive, who is a 4-mana 2/4 human with vigilance that makes our opponents pay 1 mana for each creature they want to attack us with. We'll also be running Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts, who is once again a human, 7 mana 4/4, who has vigilance and protection from creatures. And whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature and make a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. Teysa's awesome. They won't want to hit you with anything that's relevant, and if they do, you get a 1/1 spirit while it's not a human, is still something you can sacrifice to a lot of your sacrifice effects. We will also be running Ghostly Prison. Similar to Baird, classic, Ghostly Prison. 2 extra mana for each creature they want to attack you with, they're going to have to pay. Makes it a lot harder for people to hit you and try and take the monarchy. We'll also run Blind Obedience, which will give us a cool way to extort, as well as making artifacts and creatures your opponent's control entering the battlefield tapped. That means hasty creatures won't be able to swing out and steal the monarchy out from under us. Speaking of the monarchy, we may have the monarchy locked down by getting to cast our commander and steal it whenever we want, but we have a couple of other effects in the deck that will enter in and give us the monarchy. One is Palace Jailer, a human soldier that when he enters, gives us the monarchy and exiles a creature an opponent controls until an opponent becomes the monarch. With all our ways to defend ourselves as the monarch, we should be able to keep a creature locked down for quite some time with Palace Jailer. We'll also be running a Marchesa's Decree, because it'll enter in and give us the monarchy and disincentivize our opponents to attack us by dealing 1 damage to them for each creature they do it with. Next up, we're going to go over our random good humans part of the deck. These are human creatures that are just really cool, powerful creatures that happen to be humans, so we are going to be running them. One such creature, Verge Rangers. Verge Rangers is an awesome card advantage engine in white of all things. That's a 3 mana 3/3 human scout with first strike that lets us look at the top card of our library and play lands off the top of our library so long as an opponent controls more lands than us. There's always going to be a green player at the table. They're always going to control more lands than you. So this will be a cool source of ramp and card advantage for us. Next up, Keeper of the Accord. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more creatures than you make a 1/1 soldier creature token. This token may not be a human, but it is another thing we can sacrifice to a lot of our Aristocrats effects. Keeper of the Accord also has the ability, at the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more lands than you get to search your library for a basic plains, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Once again, this is Commander. There's going to be a lot of people with a lot of lands on the battlefield, so Keeper of the Accord will give us a good steady string of lands to keep ramping us and keep us at least at par with the players ramping harder than us in the game. We're going to run Athalia's Lancers, a 5 mana 4/4 with first strike that enters the battlefield and lets us search for a legendary card, reveal it, and put it into our hand. We have lots of powerful legendary humans in the deck that we can search out with this, and it's a really cool tutor that also just gives us a human on the battlefield. We're also going to run Fireflux Squad, which is a 4 mana 4/3 with haste that enters in and lets us exile one of our hopefully super expendable creature tokens, and then reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal a creature card and put it onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Rest cards go on the bottom in a random order. This will let us turn our tokens into much more relevant and powerful threats. We're going to run a Mentor of the Meek, who is a great source of card draw for a deck like this that makes lots of small creatures. We're going to run Audric Master Tactician, because he really messes with combat math so long as it's him and at least 3 other creatures attacking, and we get to kind of make our opponents make the blocks that are most favorable for us when we do big swings, or no blocks at all, if that's the best way to go, when we swing out with our army of humans. Last, generic powerful human, Mother of Runes. Mother of Runes is a 1 mana 1/1, taps to give a creature you control protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. This is a super powerful protection effect on a human. We gotta run it. Next up, we're going to go over some of the targeted removal spells that we're going to be running in this deck. First up, Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares is one of the most premium removal spells in all of Magic's history. 1 mana, instant speed, exiles a creature, they gain some life, but who cares, you spent 1 mana at instant speed to get rid of the scariest creature on the board. Also run a D-Spark, which will let us instant speed once again, 2 mana, exile any permanent so long as its mana cost is 4 or greater. This is a great spell to take out a big, powerful threat. Dire Tactics is a must-run in any human tribal deck, because it is 1 and a black to exile a creature. We'll lose life equal to that creature's toughness if we don't control any humans, but it'll be very rare that that's the case. Utter End, another powerful all-star in the Commander format. 4 mana, instant speed, exiles any non-land permanent. Really, really good. And lastly, Return to Dust, which lets us exile an artifact or enchantment, or 2 of those, so long as we cast it during our main phase. Our deck commits to the board a lot. We have a lot of creatures we're going to make, and board wipes are pretty bad for us. That being said, we are going to run a couple of board wipes in this deck. They are going to be ones, however, that are versatile in what they hit, or only hit our opponent's things. We're going to be running Cleansing Nova, which is a 5 mana, destroy all creatures, or all artifacts and enchantments. Lets us choose which we want and which is not as bad for us and much worse for our opponents. Similarly, Merciless Eviction is 6 mana. It's an exile-based board wipe, which is great for those nasty indestructible creatures, and it allows us to choose to get rid of all the artifacts, all the creatures, all the enchantments, or all the planeswalkers. This is an awesome board wipe to take out whatever the most relevant pile of threats is on your opponent's side of the board. Lastly, and a game ender of a spell, Ruinous Ultimatum. If you're in Mardu, you're running Ruinous Ultimatum. It's awesome. 7 mana, destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. This means everything that's not yours or a land is getting destroyed. This plus a decent board is usually game over for the rest of the table. Along with this interaction we're going to be using to take our opponent's threats out, we have a couple of protection spells to protect us and our board. We're going to be running a Flawless Maneuver, which will give all of our creatures indestructible. And most importantly, if we control our commander, we're going to be able to cast this without paying its mana cost. This is going to allow us, so long as we have Queen Marchesa out, to tap down, casting whatever we want to cast, and still know that if the opponents go to throw a board wipe down, we will have an instant speed way to save our creatures. Similarly to Flawless Maneuver, we're going to be running Boros Charm. This will be 2 mana, give all of our permanents indestructible, more often than not, protecting us from a board wipe, but can also deal 4 damage to a player if that happens to be what you need to kill somebody, or give a creature double strike if that'll save you or save the creature or kill an opponent as well. Lastly, in that protection spell slot, we're going to be running Deflecting Palm. Deflecting Palm, situational, not always great depending on what the board looks like, but when you get somebody with it, oh man, it's the best feeling in the world. Deflecting Palm is awesome. It reads, the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to that source's controller. This means if your opponents stack a bunch of counters or equipment or whatever on one of their creatures and do a big attack at you with it, you can say, no you, flip it around, and sometimes kill them. Doesn't happen all the time, that's kind of magical Christmas land, but that's what we live for, so we're gonna try it. Lastly, we have a couple of miscellaneous cards that are good or I just like that I'm running because I just like them. They don't necessarily fit any of the themes of the deck, but I had a couple of slots left over and I wanted to run them, so why not? First off is Commander All-Star Cathar's Crusade. With all the creatures we're going to be making, its ability to give +1/+1 counters to each of our creatures each time a creature enters the battlefield means that our army of little dorky humans is going to get giant really, really quick. We'll also run another Commander All-Star here, Debt to the Deathless. White, black, X. Each opponent loses 2 times X life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. This is just an end-the-game, giant mana dump you can do to either wipe your opponents out or hopefully get yourself enough life to keep you in the game when things go wrong. We're also going to be running Scheming Symmetry. It's a really cool tutor that lets you choose 2 players, and each of them get to tutor out any card and put that on top of their library. This is a fun one because you're almost always going to choose yourself and somebody that you're making a deal with, whether they are just going to be friendlier to you because you gave them a card they want, or what I like to do is see whatever the biggest threat is at the board and try and convince somebody that I'll let them tutor for an answer to it. This means that the card they're getting off of this tutor I'm giving them isn't going to hurt me, it's going to hurt another one of my opponents, but they'll still see me as a friend and an ally for doing it for them. Lastly, there's not really an excuse to run this card in this deck. There's nothing that it fits with at all in the deck, but I like it, and so I'm running it. And that's Master of Cruelties. Master of Cruelties is a 5 mana, 1/4 demon with first strike and death touch. It can only attack alone, and when it attacks a player and isn't blocked, that player's life total becomes 1, and then it deals no combat damage that turn. Super, super fun. Your opponents will never want to block it, but they'll always have to because that ability basically means they lose the game. And if it ever does connect, you have a lot of different effects that'll just ping a single damage for sacrificing a creature, so it's pretty easy to finish them off at that point.
That is it for the Queen Marchesa Commander deck. A full deck list on Untapped is in the link down below in the description. If you have any ideas for cards that should go in or out of this deck, any thoughts about the deck itself, or anything else you want to talk about, please feel free to do that down in the comments below. A like, comment, or subscribe is very, very appreciated. Thank you for watching. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.